So I created this YouTube channel 12, 13 years ago when I was about 24. Now I'm 37 and I've changed. I'm a whole different person. I'm a whole different woman. I actually went from girl to woman in that phase. And the aspects of myself that I put on and was then don't resonate now.
Hey everyone, my name is Bridget and I just wanted to jump in here before we get started with this channel update and thank all of you so much for being here with me on this journey over the years. I've appreciated your presence and your support so much. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank you and welcome anyone new to the channel. And this is more of a big transitional letting go share. And then in upcoming videos, I'll share more of the direction that I'm going, the direction that we can go together. So without further ado, let's keep going.
So some of these that I don't resonate with, and also that have been keeping a blockage, a resistance to me creating on this channel, because I'm a different person than I was. So it's kind of like this. This is exactly what it's like. It's like a person, me, psyoping my younger self's channel and like doing something completely different. And I'm like, well, it's kind of hers. And so maybe I should just go make a new one. And so I was very adamantly exploring that idea. And Melanie Beckler was like, no, like, don't do that. Like, just stay on this channel and stuff because, you know, obviously I've put so much into it. But also I appreciated that prompt because I'm like, well, but that past self is me. So this is my right to be able to speak here and to be here. What I need to do is bring it up to speed and inform you to see if you would like to continue here with me, but also to bring up to speed the aspects of myself that I don't resonate with anymore, so that you can also be informed as to where we're going and where that's coming from. So some of the identities I don't resonate with anymore, or one influencer. I don't resonate with that. I love the ability to have impact. I love the ability to serve, but I don't care. And that can be exemplified by the fact that I like deleted my Instagram that had a lot of followers that I built for a long time. Also because I believe that the influencers is different than leadership, and I don't want to influence in those ways. I want to be like a leader and a teacher. And I know influencers are good, but you know what I mean? That like persona of like influencer. Okay, so let's back up for a second. I was in my mid-20s. I did not feel comfortable in my own skin. I did to a certain degree. So there is a thread, absolutely, of authenticity and sincerity that has run through everything that I've done. And I appreciate the process in all aspects of myself. And I actually go back to some of my old videos and I'm like, dang, you said that better than I can probably say that today. And you were sharing some pretty badass stuff and you were really going for it. And so there's so much that I appreciate about my past self. But some of the ways I did it were for the ego, persona, identity gains, including needing to be an influencer, which was to be popular, to belong, because I didn't feel like I belonged at all in the culture, in the social groups that I grew up in. I was like so black sheep and like, you're going to hell, that I was like, I would feel really good to be liked. It would feel really good to have a lot of attention. I never get to speak. And I just want to talk a lot. And so that's how I was feeling back then. I don't feel that way anymore. I've cleaned up and like cleared a lot of those wounds and pains to where like I don't need to hear myself talk anymore. And I much rather be in group situations, facilitating, be one-on-one, being in person with people and having it be like a two-way conversation. I think that this in and of itself isn't reciprocal, and there's no way that like kind of you can kind of get to me in a past self-safety sense to where I could just freely speak. I was moving from that space. And even in the past couple of years, I'm just going to be jumping all around. Even in the past couple of years, because of the way that I presented myself for attention, to have influence and become more popular, which means that I had to do what everyone else was doing, which includes wearing a lot of makeup, having a little cleavage, like kind of entertaining, putting on a show. Definitely, I wouldn't say sensationalizing my spiritual experiences, because that's actually how they were, but in a way that commodified them and didn't hold them as sacred experiences for myself, where it was kind of like I'm, like selling them off and to entertain you and such, using sexuality, like, flirtatious or like charismatic, borderline arousal energy, which is everywhere, by the way. But using all of those things for attention, for influence, to keep entertainment, all those things. And I don't resonate with doing that anymore. I'm sure there's still parts of me that do. I'm working on that. But that does not feel authentic to my heart, to my womb, to my body, to my soul. And I know that I have absolute worth and value being me without any of that stuff. And so it's been a big process. And so it's specifically with those pieces, that's one of the reasons I think I created my Wild and Awake podcast, was because it was a place where I didn't have to be seen. Like, I didn't have to, when I used to put on the camera, even the past few years, it's like, okay, like I'm gonna entertain and I need to look a certain way. And I just felt like this past thing I had built in myself, and where the current goes in the world, I just didn't want to play that game at all anymore. And so it felt really authentic, and it still does feel really authentic to be on my Wild and Awake podcast and just talk without anyone seeing me. And then I felt even more actually heard, and I felt like I had more impactful teachings or sharings, because it wasn't masqueraded in all this other visual stuff that can really take away from what is really wanting to be shared and conveyed and transmitted. And also it can be included. So I just needed a time away from that, because there was just so much of that for so many years. I mean, I started off on Facebook. It was like the first or second year that it came out was when I entered college. And oh my God, like how I portrayed myself, and just being so intimately woven in my maturation with social media and the sexualized algorithms and the vain beautification and comparison and like all those things are not interesting to me anymore. And so I needed time to like fully detox that and separate myself also in my creatorship from those energies, so that I can come clean and shift in that way. So those are some of the identities that, I'm moving into more alignment with, of how I authentically want to show up. And then some of the other ones are obviously being New Age and Alien Girl, that your spiritual everything is only possible or will come through me or something. And none of that also resonates. I want to also be inclusive of people that have chosen to go down a religious path, or don't maybe identify themselves as New Age or Starseed or those things. Like, I want this availability of what is coming through me from an authentic place to be available for everyone. And so speaking and tailoring specifically, you have to use certain words. You have to use like a certain way of being to be a part of that tribe, a part of that club. And honestly, living in sacred sites for 10, 12 years straight, it starts to get actually kind of gross, where it gets so exaggerated, where you're like, this isn't we missed it, we lost it, like there was something true, there was something like purely authentic in, say, the spiritual kind of like new age space, and then it just got all blown up. And we're in our own worlds, and that's awesome, and I love that. Like, it is a part of me still. But I don't need to exaggerate, or I don't need to also like express in that way, because I'm integrating other parts of myself as well that I find equally valuable. And some of that can get really disembodied, and part of my spiritual path has been coming back to my body and coming back to embodiment. And that's not necessarily for everyone, because these identities, again, are really helpful because they protect us. Like, they can be coping mechanisms, and that's okay. And so I'm really doing my best to be like inclusive of all, but I want to show up in the way that feels resonant for me now. And so that's also part of it as well, is I stand behind that my experiences that I had in like the ET realm were very authentic experiences, and I'm not having as many now, and I'm moving on a different path. I'm having just as many, if not more, spiritual experiences, bliss experiences on like multiple times a week. Like, I'm actually having more of those kinds of encounters, but just with different ways of being, like with the sun and the earth and my own spirit and different things. And I don't need to talk about them as much. And so it's just changed form. And so those are some of the bits as well. It still very much so means that I love and care and appreciate all of you. And I also honor wherever you're at in your path and however you want to express. Like, that's the beauty of this world. That's the beauty of 3D, is that we do have that free will choice and expression. And so with this being my free will choice and expression, I wanted to bring you up to speed of the direction that I'm personally going that feels authentic to where I am now, right? Like 12, 13 years later, and in a way that very much so invites you to stay around, as well as honors that if it doesn't resonate, it doesn't resonate. So I want to close up here, because this has been long, but it feels like it's been essential and necessary, is to say that what helped me, well, there's lots of things that helped me like move out of these identities and personas and move in a place of authentic self-worth and real like rooted wholeness, to where I didn't need to like cater to certain things or like put on certain ways of being and do little dances as much. And that was by like doing a tremendous amount of somatic and nervous system and deep soul excavation and like inner child stuff, which I have a lot of, by the way, if you're interested in. Like, I've pretty much encapsulated like the main things that have helped me, and I'll put the links down below to those processes. They're very affordable and very effective for you to do too, but those things are what has brought me back to more of myself. And those other parts of me in the past were also myself, but it was a journey, right? Like, we're just refining and becoming more and more aligned with what is true self, and that's ever changing, and that's okay. Like, that's okay. Like, that's the fun of the journey. Like, that's the fun of the process. Really, actually, that there is no arrival. It makes it very interesting, especially for me that loves change and loves evolution. So doing those really deep interpersonal space work, somatic work, helps to resolve those identities to where they're no longer needed, because those parts, those like wounded parts, or those shielding parts, or those parts that feel pushed out or not belonging, that manifest in all kinds of interesting and beautiful and strange ways, they feel like met and heard and seen. Well, I wasn't going to say it, but I'll just say, like, getting off of the program material that is a lot of social media is so important, because we just become and contort ourselves into like what we see and what like gets a lot of likes and what just like stimulates our dopamine and all these weird things, to where then there's so much judgment, and then we try and contort, and it's just so bad. So really taking a step away back from that is really important. It's not a very popular thing to talk about, but it's really important. The authentic self and real personal connection, where our frailties, our wounds, our vulnerabilities actually become fuel and nourishment of interpersonal connection and relatedness, where each other relate, and actually those things that we're trying to hide on social media or behind the identities or behind the personas are the very things that bond us and bring us together. And so it's just beautiful. It's really significant. And so however you can take a step away, and I can do something on that. Let me know down below if you're interested in something like that, learning more. But it's been probably one of the most significant things. Somatic work, getting off of social media, or at least taking a really big step away, getting in person and in nature with myself and other people again. Last but not least are reflections of acceptance. Interfacing with people that are also not identified, as well as are really just open-minded and open-hearted to connection, no matter what the identity is. They're just interested in you or interested in that. And so that is a really, really wonderful way of starting to dissolve the identities. And that's what helped me actually in the past few days to have this breakthrough, to be able to clearly identify the identities that were held up and built alongside this channel, and what I'm wanting to appreciate it for what it was, and also move on to this next stage of where the new me can take over the show now and express in the way that I am today. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. I also put this on my Wild and Awake podcast because it's an important update for myself, and I hope that there were some cool, interesting things you learned, and maybe that you want to introduce into your own life and spiritual journey. And sending you so much love, and I hope to see you soon. I think you will now that I've said all of this. And so talk to you then.